And then about a year after that, I went back to New York again for The Guardian to interview, what's his name? LCD Sound System.
Oh, I read that recently, yeah, James Murphy.
Yeah, James Murphy. And again, this was when the term hipster was first becoming very mainstream. And he was basically regarded as the king of the hipsters, right? He was like from Williamsburg, where it all started, and was just like almost painfully cool in all of his cultural references. And everyone wanted to cite him or reference him or say that they were working with him. And that sort of thing instinctively puts me off people and things, when it's like it's too cool that it almost goes full circle. And the Guardian said, just go and interview him. I said, what do you want me to interview him about? And they said, just ask him like what things he's into, because he's like the king of the cool kids. And so whatever he's into, we want to know. And I thought, fucking hell. But obviously it was a free trip to New York. So I went, and this is so sort of entitled and privileged, but I just remember having the ump because I just had to sit in this sound check for like 5 hours or something. And it was completely overrunning. And then we eventually came out and we went for a Japanese meal, me and him and his publicist. And I just had to ask this bloke, who was fully convinced of his own coolness, to tell me what cool things he was into. Now, I fucking understand that it was a privilege to be there and it was a great job, and I shouldn't be fucking moaning about having opportunities like that. But I remember being a right grumpy bastard on my trip to New York with James Murphy, and we didn't really click with each other. Whereas the Scissor Sisters, it was the opposite. We totally fucking clicked, and I had a great time and came away thinking that they were my mates for life.
Yeah, with the Scissor Sisters, and we were just like knocking around with them for a bit rather than it being a sit-down interview.
Yeah, it was like one of those days where they were doing a photo shoot for the Enemy, then they were doing other things that they had to do, and I just kind of hooked up with them in the morning and then just spent the day with them, and they were like extremely friendly, very kind of fabulous, in every way, particularly animatronic. And, they were just a right laugh. And I was like really taken by them. And I remember asking them what records influenced them, but not in that, you're so cool, tell me what cool things you're into, which is what happened with James Murphy. It was more like, I just fucking thought that they were amazing. And I wanted to know everything I just wanted to know loads about what music they were into and stuff. And I remember them I remember them saying that the 2 albums that they wouldn't exist without, and that they'd based almost everything about themselves on, were Purple Rain and Midnight Vultures by Beck. And obviously I already owned Purple Rain and was very familiar with it. And that was what really endeared me to them even more, because at that stage, Prince is a name that everyone will drop now. But this, again, was a time before some of these artists had sort of been revived as a cool reference point. They might have still been regarded as like just mainstream pop or whatever. And I was delighted by the fact that they were like not citing, what the obvious band to cite was at the time. They said Prince, Purple Rain, and they said Beck, Midnight Vultures. I think that's what the album's called. But I remember going to Tower Records on Times Square the next day and buying it immediately on CD and listening to it on my Discman all the way home.
Yes. I remember talking about the being cool thing. I was reading your article with Black Rebel Motorcycle Club.
Yeah.
It's quite funny. Some of the stuff. Oh, really? Yeah, some of the stuff you wrote in that was quite funny in terms of, he said something like he was turning down $500,000 every other week or something.
Yeah, I can't remember the content. I will go back and read that article, but I do remember that being another one that I didn't enjoy. And these are hardly any. Most of them I just fucking really like. I love always meeting very creative people, right? And asking them how they work and getting insight to what makes them tick. And, anyone who's putting their fucking head above the parapet, and, whether it's Kaiser Chiefs or whoever it fucking is, I've got a huge amount of respect for, and I'm fascinated by them, even if their output isn't fully to my taste, because creative people are interesting. And So I have to say that on the whole, that's why I did all this stuff. And like how I said at the beginning, I didn't really care who they sent me to interview. I didn't have to like their work. And I would try my best as well to be positive about their work, not in a kind of bland way, but there was something positive to say about everyone. And it wasn't about my personal taste, you know. And so I don't want to sound like, I was grumpy with all these people. But if I remember, I don't have many people often say, who are the worst people you interviewed? And I don't have many stories like that because most people are on their best behavior when they meet someone from the press. But I remember Black Rebel Motorcycle Club sitting in a suite in one of these posh hotels in Park Lane where they do their sort of press days, and just finding it really like pulling teeth because they were so falling over themselves to be cool and disinterested and cynical about doing press. It's one of those situations where they think, oh, we've got to do press, but doing press really cheapens us. And we have instinctive mistrust for any journalist. And you're there just trying to do your job. And you think, for fuck's sake, mate, you know, all right, you might not want to be here. I don't particularly want to be here either, but let's just like do what we've both got to do. So I remember being a bit put out by them and then going to see them actually maybe that same night and thinking, actually, this is just a load of miserable old noise. I mean, you know, they were often the other band mentioned in the same breath as the Strokes. But for me, the Strokes had great melodies that even if you changed the genre of music and played the whole thing on a fucking Bontempi organ, a lot of their songs would still sound really good. Because it's really just about so much of it starts with melody. And some bands are like more about, we'll get the sound and the look and the production and the PR, and that will be enough. But actually, the bands that actually last the distance and have a bit of a legacy are usually ones who like know how to come up with a melody that could work almost in any genre. I think the Arctic Monkeys were like that. Strokes were like that. Black Rebel Motorcycle Club for me was just like they had all the gear and no idea.
Now I remember really liking one of the songs, the big Spread Your Love, was it? But apart from that, I don't know much about them apart from that, really. But yeah, it's funny in that interview at one point you say things picked up when he thought he could see an alien behind the curtain or something. Yeah,
I think sometimes when I was writing pieces, if there was what I really liked is you go and interview someone and you press record and you barely have to say anything and they just say loads of fucking fascinating or funny stuff. Like a couple of years ago, I interviewed Noel Gallagher and he's like the classic for that. You just don't really need to bother with a question. You just press record and you could just say to him, right, start talking. And then you'll just come away with like an hour's worth of gold that you just transcribe and that's it. And I'm happy with that. I don't want to have to put a lot of myself into these articles. But sometimes you go there and it's like pulling teeth and you think the only way I can make this article work now is to basically tell the story of the encounter with this person because their quotes are useless. So I need to sort of embellish this by just making it sort of funny and entertaining for other reasons. But when I did that, it usually was indicative of an interview that had gone very badly and that I hadn't enjoyed.
Yeah, fair. Yeah.